Hey guys, welcome to Commander Lounge. Yes, I do have another Commander deck tech for you guys today, and this is Rakdos deck tech. If you guys noticed, I've done a lot of different type of like reanimation decks, and I wanted to do another one. I really wasn't in the mood for reanimating more Eldrazi. I love don't get me wrong, I love the spaghetti monsters, but I want to do something different. So this is a nice little. It's kind of a mix between, a dragon tribal deck and just a reanimate dragon deck. Like, you want to reanimate, something powerful in the beginning, but it's not going to be as powerful as, like, Eldrazi, So, this isn't a crazy competitive commander deck. If you guys want a more competitive commander deck, you guys might want to look at my prior videos with anything reanimating Eldrazi, because that's huge, especially when you reanimate anything with Annihilator in the beginning of the game. That's just crushing. But yeah, let's just get into the deck. So I'm using Bladwing the Risen as my commander. He is a zombie dragon. He's got black, red, and 3 colorless for his cost. He's a 4/4 flyer, and when he enters the battlefield, I may return a dragon permanent card from my graveyard to the battlefield. And not only does he only do that, but he also, for Rakdos, whenever I pay Rakdos, I can pump all my dragon creatures +1/+1 until end of turn. Which that could be huge, because this deck, it's about reanimating dragons, getting all kinds of dragon synergy, and then I really want to win through a mass reanimation, bringing back all my dragons from the graveyard, and win through that route. So having the pump all dragons is huge on this also. So yeah, let's get into the deck. Start out with our utility lands. Ancient Tomb, great for ramp. Strip Mine, good for getting rid of problem lands. Ghost Quarter, also good for getting rid of problem lands. High Market, early game you don't want people taking your things, so just sacrifice them in response. Homeward Path the first time? I'm sorry if I did. First one's High Market, sacrifice a gain of life. Homeward Path is just when you gain control of your creatures back if somebody takes your creature, so you can get it back. With reanimation, Homeward Path is a great card for like reanimation strategies. Usually that's the biggest problem, is after you reanimate something, they just take it from you, and you're just like, oh shit, shouldn't have done that. So yeah, Homeward Path is a solid card. Garage Sanitarium is a great card in reanimation decks because it starts filling up your graveyard. It is a little group huggy. People will be like, oh cool, yeah, let's dig, but usually it benefits you more than the other player in this deck. Alright, now into our kind of fetchies kind of land, Grixis Panorama. I love the Panorama cycles. It's great. It gives you, I think it's a speedy fetch in my eyes without getting pinged for it. Jund Panorama, got both the Panorama cycles. Ash Baron's also another good one. It reminds me of a Panorama, so I like it. Crucible of the Spirit Dragon. It may tap for only 1 colorless, but I can do the whole storage counter thing. And I can actually remove the storage counter to add any color mana in any combination I want to either cast a dragon or to activate its ability, which there's a lot of activated abilities I could actually use this for. So it's a nice little mana sink. Bloodstained Mire, going into the fetches. This was the fetch I was talking about earlier. Just solid card. Bloodfell Caves. Unfortunately ends the battlefield tap, but we gain a life. It's something. Akum Refuge. Same thing. Functional reprint, I guess. Shadowblood Ridge. I actually just started playing with these lands. I just recently got a hold of them, so they seem good. Rakdos Carnarium. Not usually a fan of the Karoo lands because of cards like Strip Mine, but, I like being greedy. I want the colors. I want it now. Reflecting Pool. Great card. Really good in more than just 2-colored decks, but I just felt like throwing it in here. I was like, why not? It's a fast tapper. Dragon Skull Summit, solid dual land. Blood Crypt, awesome. Works well with your Bloodstained Mire, or whatever it's called. Luxury Suite. This is a new card from Battle Bond or whatever it's called. This land cycle is insane for Commander, because Commander's mostly a multiplayer format. And because of that, this is treated like a command tower, not like a command tower, because that taps for any color. But, they're traded as, like, basic dual lands, like, pretty much dual lands. They're great. Speaking of command tower, we also have to run command tower. Badlands. Yeah, I got a hold of these when they were cheaper, and I traded a whole bunch into them. It's always nice having dual lands. Alright, now into the, guess the single colored lands. These are the mountain utility lands. Forgotten Cave. It's just always good to have a cycler, like late game. You draw a land, you can just ditch it for another card. Spine Rock Knoll. It's the first time I've actually played with this, so I don't know how it's going to be. I just think you know, with me having big fat flyers in the sky, I feel like 7 damage isn't a problem, so I'll get a, you know, I'll get a free card off of that, probably another dragon. So that seems good. And then I believe we run 5 mountains. Alright, now into the black utility lands. We got Barrenmore, another cycler. Always good to have a cycler. Bajuka Bog, hate on the graveyards. It's important. Hate on the graveyards, that's not your graveyard. You don't want to run cards that hate on your graveyard. Alright, and 5 swaps. Alright, now into the ramp. Surprise, the first one's Soul Ring. Of course, gotta have Soul Ring. Even though we're not trying to ramp into the Dargans, it's always good just to ramp in general. It gets ahead of your opponents. Same thing with Mana Vault, does the same thing. Take some damage for it, but it's worth it. Wayfarer's Bauble, the reason why I say Bauble at the end of my videos. It's rampant growth in non-green colored decks. It's great. Rakdos Signet. Signets are great. I mean, usually I don't run Signets in any green deck, but if it's not a green deck, I run Signets usually. Burnished Heart, same thing. If it's not a green deck, I'm running this in the non-green decks because it's explosive vegetations on a stick, and that's huge. It's really good. It gets you right into the game if you're falling a little behind. Solemn Simulacrum, Sad Robot. You guys know this card so well. It's a staple. It replaces itself. It ramps. It blocks. It's a thing. All right, now into my kind of forms of removal. We got Rakdos Charm. This card has always been an all-star in any of my like Rakdos-y kind of decks, Jundi decks. You know, being able to hate on someone else's graveyard that's not mine is great. Being able to get rid of Artifact is huge, since Artifact is just rampant in Commander. Usually Artifacts fill in the color pie that's missing in your deck if you're not playing 5-color, of course. And the last ability is insane against token decks. I've definitely won. I think there was like 2 games I've won just because of that last ability. I would do it in response to them like attacking me. I'd be like, don't attack me, and then they'll attack me. I'd be like, okay, you're dead. So don't underestimate the bottom ability. That ability can crush token decks. Alright, next Chaos Warp. Chaos Warp is just important because we don't have the access of taking care of usually enchantments for the most part. Chaos Warp lets us take care of that, and you know it's good against indestructibility. Might have other ways to deal with indestructibility in this deck, but Chaos Warp is just a solid removal card in red. You know, it's something we need for especially for enchantments, for non-creature stuff. Alright, another new card from Battle Bond. This is like a big reason why I wanted to build a deck. I saw this card and I just got super excited about it. I mean, it's essentially a 3-mana Wrath. Like, yeah, somebody gets something out of it, but it could be me. But I just think for 3 mana, it's so worth it. It's super cheap. I love the card. And I like the flavor text about being lucky. I'm a fan of that. Luck is always a thing. Alright, next removal card. Oblivion Stone. Well, we need this because we can't really deal with enchantments and stuff, so it's good to have a Wrath that hits pretty much that hits all permanents, except, all non-land permanents, of course. And Perilous Vault against the Indestructibles, exiling and everything like that. If it gets too crazy. You know, it's those 2 cards, Oblivion Stone and Perilous Vault, those 2 cards are pretty much automatic inclusions in any of my decks, unless it's like mono white. Alright, now some fun stuff for my Dragon Tribal deck. Crux of Fate. 5-mana, destroy all non-dragon creatures. That's what it says. It's never going to be destroy all dragon creatures. Well, maybe in this very niche situation, but whatever. Next is Kindred Dominance. It's the more expensive version of Crux of Fate. It's 7 mana, choose a creature type, destroy all creatures that aren't of the chosen type, so I'd pick Dragon, of course, even though there's a bunch of demons on there. Next is Blasphemous Act, just a very, very cheap Wrath spell. I mean, I don't know how many times I've cast this for 1. It's solid. It's a great card. Alright, I'll move us in a little bit more. Sorry about that. Alright, now into like the card advantage. the ways to dump cards into the graveyard, dump our Dargans into the graveyard. The first one's Gamble. Gamble's great because it actually does double duty in this deck. Not only does it get what I want, but there's a lot of cards I'm also going to be wanting to discard to my hand into the graveyard. So even though there's a randomness to this card, for the most part, it should be solid. Next is Faithless Looting. I think is this Chinese? I believe this is Chinese. I don't have an English foil version of it, so I have a Chinese or Japanese version of it. I think it's Chinese. But Faithless Looting is 1 red, it's a sorcery, and then you draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. And then it has a flashback cost for 3. Just a great card for what I'm doing in this deck, with getting card advantage while also dumping in the graveyard. Same thing with Cathartic Reunion. Cathartic Reunion is just a great card. It's one of those amazing cards that got printed. You discard 2 cards as an additional cast, which we're going to want to do, or additional cost, and you draw 3 cards, which is great card advantage. Next is Dark Deal, kind of a wheel. 3 mana, each player discards all the cards in his or her hand, then draws that many cards. Solid card. It's what we're doing. We really want to wheel. We want to just dump all our dragons in our graveyard and draw more cards. And we do that also with Wheel of Fate. Wheel of Fate's great. It sucks that Wheel of Fate, Wheel of Fortune. It sucks how expensive they are right now, though. It's ridiculous. That's why, if you guys need a budget version, go for Magus of the Wheel or the Wheel of Fate, like I said earlier. That's a solid card. You have to wait a little bit more for it, but it's definitely a lot more budget. But this is Wheel of Fortune on a stick. Reforge the Soul is your Miracle Wheel. That's a solid card. And then, even though this isn't a wheel card, this is in the bracket of filling up your graveyard. Stinkweed Imp is an all-star in a lot of decks. He's Pauper All-Star also, thank you very much. He's a great card. Great card. Alright, now into Dragon synergies. We have Sarkhan's Triumph, which is 3 mana for an instant speed Dragon Tutor. And then you put it to your hand also, which is sweet. Next is Dragon Tempest, 2 mana for an enchantment, and whenever a creature with flying enters the battlefield under your control, it gains haste, which is nice. It gives everything haste, which is another reason why I don't run anger in this. This is one of the few decks that I actually was building, and it was so tough to cut. I think I had after I built the deck, I had 30 cuts, something silly like that, and I just kept feeling bad every time I had to cut something because I really didn't want to cut it. But Dragon Tempest is just one of those cards I couldn't cut. I was like, we'll cut the anger instead. I mean, just that second ability, whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals X damage to target creature or a player, where X is the number of dragons you control. Just that, plus a mass reanimate, it seems good. So that's what we're doing. Alright, now into the fun Dargans that we're going to either reanimate, mass reanimate, or late game cast. We start out with our kind of wheelie dragons. We got Null Spine Dragon, which is 7 mana for a 7/5 flying. And when it comes into play, you may discard your hand and draw cards equal to the damage dealt to target opponent this turn. So that could be a lot of cards. Avaricious Dragon. This isn't one I really want to reanimate. It's 4 mana for a 4/4, so we should be fine casting it, just hard casting it. We really like it for its ability, though. It's a flyer. That at the beginning of my draw step, I draw an additional card, so it's a Phyrexian Arena Dragon. But at the beginning of your end step, I have to discard my whole hand, which usually that's a huge downside, but because my deck wants to work from the graveyard, maybe it won't be as much of a downside. I know there's going to be times where this bites me in the butt, but for the most part, I think it's a solid card. So, especially in this deck, in this type of strategy. Next is Dragon Mage. 7 mana for a 5/5 Dragon Wizard, and it flies, of course. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, each player discards his or her hand, then draws 7 cards. So this is your Wheel of Fortune Dragon. He's great. Gotta have him in this kind of deck. All right, we'll move in a little bit more. All right, next is Runehorn Hellkite. It's another wheel dragon. 6 mana for a 5/5 flyer. And then you can pay 6 and exile this card from your graveyard, and then each player discards his or her hand, and then draw 7 cards. So another good card to get in your graveyard and be like, we might not reanimate him, we might just use him as wheel fodder to keep on building up the graveyard. Next is Boneyard Scourge. This is when we get to more of our damage-dealing Dargans. 8 mana for a 5/5 flash flyer, and when he enters the battlefield, he can deal 5 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or players. Next is Moonveil Dragon. It's 6 mana for a 5/5 flyer. And this also, just like your commander, it actually anthems up. Well, pretty much anthems up, pseudo-anthems up your whole Dargon team. You pay 1 red, basically fire-breathing each creature you control. So it's awesome. He gives all your dragons fire-breathing. Okay, next is Ryusei the Falling Star. 6 mana for a 5/5 flyer. And when Ryusei the Falling Star dies, it deals 5 damage to each creature without flying. Seems good. Next is Balefire Dragon. This is one of my favorite dragons. Balefire Dragon is 7 mana for a 6/6 flyer, and when it deals combat damage to a player, it deals that much damage to each creature that player controls. Like, that is backbreaking. I love this card in Xenagos, because Xenagos would just double its power and deal 12 damage to the player, and then deal 12 damage to all of his creatures, just pretty much wipes them out. It's amazing. But this is my favorite Dargon. This is a lot of people's favorite Dargon. This card can win games by itself if it's left unchecked. And that's Nexus Hellkite. That's 8 mana for a 6/6 flyer. And whenever a dragon you control, a dragon, not a dragon, attacks, put a 6/6 red dragon creature token with flying onto the battlefield. Like, this is already great by itself. Like, you're not gonna already make... It's an army in a can by itself. But in this deck, like, if I mass reanimate and just swing in with everything, like, I could be making, like, double digits in dragons just one turn, which is absurd. It's solid. It's just a great card. Next is Hoarding Dragon. A very good card also to grab your artifacts you need. It's 5 mana for a 4/4 flying dragon. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for an artifact card, exile it, then shuffle your library. When Hoarding Dragon is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may put the exile card into its owner's hand. Now, usually I use it. I make this look like Oblivion Ring kind of effect. When it comes out, I take the exile card and I'll put it right under Hoarding Dragon, signifying that when this dies, I'll get it. Since the opponents are supposed to have information on what's the card you tutored for. So yeah, it's a solid card. Next is Dragonlord Coligan. Just another way to give all my creatures haste. This is especially good when I mass reanimate all my creatures from my graveyard onto the battlefield, making sure they all get hasty and they all get to do something the turn they come out. Next is Hellkite Tyrant. Very good against artifact decks. 6 mana for a 6/5 flying trampler, and when it deals combat damage to a player, gain control of all artifacts that players control. Okay, guys, that is backbreaking in Commander, period, because everybody runs artifacts in their decks. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 or more artifacts, you win the game. Never done that. Maybe I'll do that with this deck. We'll see. Next is Malfagor. Let's see, it's 6 mana for a 6/6 flying and Demon Dragon, or Demon Dargon. When Malfagor enters the battlefield, discard your hand. Each opponent sacrifices a creature for each card discarded this way. Well, we should be filled with cards in our hand for most of the game because we have so many like wheel effects, different types of wheel effects. So this could be backbreaking. This could be usually like play it and then like, you know, make them sacrifice 6 cards. Each opponent sacrifices like 6 to 7 creatures, which would be sick. Next is Dragon Tyrant. I'm not too sure about this card because of its upkeep of having to pay, 4 red to keep it out. But late game, that shouldn't be a problem. But it's 10 mana for a 6/6 flying trampling, double striking Dargon. And it has fire breathing, which is huge for a double striker. It's absurd if you can put a bunch of red into it when it attacks. Next is Hellkite Charger. 6 mana for a 5/5 flying haste. Whenever Hellkite Charger attacks, you may pay 7. If you do, untap all attacking creatures, and after this phase, there's an additional combat phase. This card will be, once you mass reanimate, attack. If you have, like, more mana and stuff, like this, if you can pay that 7 mana, you pretty much win the game with a bunch of dragons out. Next is Steel Hellkite. Very good at taking out tokens. 6 mana for a 5/5 flyer. It's got 2 mana fire breathing. And you put X to destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost X, whose controller was dealt combat damage by Steel Hellkite this turn. So you gotta deal combat damage before you hurt everybody. So it's like a pseudo, Banefire Dragon or whatever. Next is Horde Smelter Dragon. It's 6 mana for a 5/5 flyer. Pay 4, destroy target artifact. Horde Smelter Dragon gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is the artifact's converted mana cost. So it gives it fire breathing after it destroys a problem artifact. Nice. Next is Tyrants Familiar. That's 7 mana for a 5/5 flying haste, and it has Lieutenant. As long as you control your commander, Tyrants Familiar gets +2/+2, so it's a 7/7. And whenever Tyrant Familiar attacks, it deals 7 damage to target creature defending player controls. That's a good amount of damage. Solid card. Next is Spawn of Thoraxis. 7 mana for a 5/5 flyer, and when Spawn of Thoraxis enters the battlefield, it deals damage to target creature or player equal to the number of mountains you control. It's pretty good. This is the card I like more than that. Scourge of Locust. It's 5 mana for a 4/4 flyer, and when he enters the battlefield or another dragon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals X damage to target creature or player, where X is the number of dragons you control. This is the greatest card you can mass reanimate with your dragons, because they all enter at the same time and they all deal the same amount of dragons. Deal the same amount of damage for the amount of dragons they control. Like, let's say you reanimate like 5 of them, they all deal 5 damage to target creature or player. It's absurd. Then we also have, it has fire breathing. It's got to have fire breathing. It's a Dargon. Next is Kaku, the Evening Star. 6 mana for a 5/5 flyer, and when it dies, each opponent loses 5 life. You gain life equal to the life lost this way. This card is absurd with Feldon of the Third Path. When I was first building this deck, Rakdos and everything, I saw Bladwing, and that's the first thing I thought of. I was like, Feldon and Kaku, that is gross. Because Feldon, I'll wait. I'll talk about it later. Next is Deathbringer Regent, 7 mana for a 5/6 flyer. But when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand, and there are 5 or more other creatures on the battlefield, destroy all other creatures. So it's a board wipe if you need it late game. Vampiric Dragon, 8 mana for a 5/5 flyer. Whenever a creature dealt damage by Vampiric Dragon this turn is put into the graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on Vampiric Dragon. And also you can pay 2, a red and 1 colorless, to deal 1 damage to target creature. So you can just do that a whole bunch, try to start sniping creatures out. Next is Boneyard Scourge. It's a 4 mana 4/3 flyer, and when a dragon you control dies, and if this card's in your graveyard, you may pay a black and a colorless, and if you do, you can bring it from the graveyard to the battlefield. So you can just keep bringing this guy back. He's a good card to have in the graveyard constantly. Next is Skyline Despot, or Despot, I don't know. 7 mana for a 5/5 flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch, which that's always great. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you're the Monarch, put a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying onto the battlefield. That is insane, even though people are coming at you when you get Monarch. Monarch is a great ability. Next is Scourge of Kurt Ridges. 8 mana for a 6/6 flyer, and you can pay a red and a colorless for a Scourge to deal 2 damage to each creature without flying. Or you can pay 6 for a Scourge to deal 6 damage to each other creature with flying. So it's got some options. Next is Furry Born Hellkite, 7 mana for a 6/6 Bloodthirst 6 flyer. So mainly you're going to want to swing in before you reanimate this, because when it enters the battlefield, it can be a 12/12, which is sweet. Okay, so we showed you what we're getting in the graveyard. We show you how we're going to get in the graveyard, but how are we getting them out of the graveyard? Here's the reanimation package. First of all, it's reanimate. 1 mana, put target creature from the battlefield, from the graveyard to the battlefield, and then you lose life equal to the converted mana cost. Solid card. Exhume. This is a great card. Pauper Staple, thank you very much. Black and 1 colorless for sorcery. Each player chooses a creature card in his or her graveyard and puts that creature into play. Just watch when you use it. Keep track of other people's graveyards, because everybody gets to do it. So be careful with this card, especially in Commander. Animate Dead is just an enchantment aura, black and colorless, and it pretty much, it just reanimates. It reanimates, and it's an aura that goes on it and gives it -1 power, which is not relevant. Next is Necromancy. You can use this, I believe, at instant speed. If you do, so you sacrifice the creature. If not, it's just basically Animate Dead, except it's got full power, basically. Next is Feldon of the Third Path. This is the combo I'm talking about. These 2 cards are nuts, okay? Because you have Kaku in the yard. You play Feldon, 3 mana, 2/3, legendary human artificer. You pay a red and 2 colorless. You can put a token on the battlefield that's a copy of target creature card in your graveyard. So you're going to copy Kaku, of course, put a token. And then it gains haste. So you attack in with it right away. And then this is the best part about it. This last part should have never been a part of Feldon, I don't think. I think this is what pushes Feldon to being overpowered. And that's sacrifice the token at the beginning of the next end step. That token's going to hit the yard even though it doesn't, it disappears as soon as it hits the yard, so it's going to trigger that ability. So you're going to be able to do that every turn, or every time you can untap it and use it. Like, it's just absurd. It's a great combo. Felden's just good with reanimating any Dargon you need at the time too. It's just solid. This is a black card. This isn't a red card. It's a black card. Thank you very much. All right, next is Diabolic Servitude. This is basically Rancor. Reanimate in like Rancor form. It's a black and 3 colorless. If that creature dies, you get Diabolic Servitude back to your hand and you get to do it again. But you have to exile the creature, I believe. Next is Dread Return. 4 mana just to reanimate. The flashback is actually probably a tough thing to do in this deck. Sacrifice 3 creatures to flashback since we're running a lot of dragons. But, I mean, it could happen. Alright, now into the mass reanimation, the way we get all the dragons back. First is Patriarch's Bidding. 5 mana, each player chooses a creature type. Each player returns all creature cards of the type chosen this way from the graveyard to play. It's a great card. I mean, this card's going up in price. As soon as they did the tribal thing, this card shot up like crazy. So, still try to pick it up if you can. Nexus Children, the Whispering one. Sorry, this is actually supposed to be in front of the the Patriarch's Bidding. This is just a really good card to reanimate early game. It's 7 mana, 6/6. Beginning of your upkeep, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, and at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature, which is insane. Next is Living Death. A good way to wipe the board and then bring everything from the graveyard back to the battlefield. This works for everybody, so just once again, be careful. Know when to use it. It's a fantastic card, though. Rise of the Dark Realms. This is kind of an I win card, but it's flavorful for the deck because I want to mass reanimate. Put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under my control. 8 mana, or 9 mana. Super worth it. These are my alternate ways of kind of doing what I want to do without having to reanimate. And the first one's Shifting Shadow. 3 mana. I have to put this on a creature, but it seems really good to fill my yard because at the beginning of your upkeep, destroy that creature, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card, put that card onto the battlefield and attach this onto it. So every turn, it's going to give it, I believe it gives it haste. Does it? I don't know. I can't read all of it. I'm getting lost in text, but it's really good. Yeah, it does. Enchant creature has haste. It's really good because you can keep on cycling through creatures, and then when they die, they hit the yard, and you can set up for mass reanimation. So it's a way to get you going. I think it's a solid card. And then I actually think the better card to replace this would be Quicksilver Amulet. But I just really wanted to play this card, so I actually cut Quicksilver Amulet. But I actually think Quicksilver Amulet might be the better spot if you want to be a little bit more competitive. And the last card is Sneak Attack to kind of, if we're not reanimating, we can't dump things into the yard yet. We just go Sneak Attack. 4 mana, and then you pay 1 red and put a creature card from my hand onto the battlefield. That creature gains haste, and you sacrifice it. So it's a way of filling up your yard too. Put it back in the yard, then reanimate it later. So yeah, guys. Sorry that took a little bit, but that was my Bladwing the Risen Commander deck. Let me know what you guys think about it. Let me know if it was great or if it sucked or if you guys want to build it, go for it. If you guys do want to build it, I'm going to put a link in the description below to the deck list. And yeah, guys, I think that's all I got. If you like dragons, if you like reanimation strategies, basically reanimation tribal kind of strategy, give this deck a try. Yeah. So, yeah, have a good night or day or whatever it is when you're watching this. And, yeah, take it easy. Bow, bow.